Hello, this is Werewolf the podcast, and this is your werewolf Will speaking. So every now and again, I like to do a podcast that's kind of unrelated to being a werewolf. In these podcasts, I tend to wax lyrical about some kind of random shite. I suppose this one does have to do with me being a werewolf, though. I don't think I'd be able to do this type of thing if it wasn't for the werewolf part of me. I couldn't sort of get the art material, as it were. So, I will shutteth the fucketh uppeth and crack on. In the past, I've told you on many occasions about my artwork. Yes, I know. In some episodes, I've even described it to you in vivid narrations. I have detailed the blood, the noise, and the fun that I've had in making these world-changing pieces. My posit Fenrir, who hopefully you know about, he's my invisible wolf soul, enjoys my artwork and has always supported my artistic edge and wants. Maybe you remember such fine work as Blood, Bile and Bullets, or my crucifix baby dissection, my video snuff pieces like The Death of Social Media, my groundbreaking dissection of an Instagram goddess. They were amazing. Thank you. I've enjoyed sharing these wonderful times with you. Such wonderful times are wonderful as I get to create the most wonderful pieces of work. I mean, I can only describe it as warranting the word wonderful. In this masterpiece, I was looking at the strength of the human form, not the fragility of it. It was not about the breaking and the destruction of the paltry thing you humans have as a physical body. It was time to see how well the human body could fight something. In this case, it would be fighting against something natural and abundant. In fact, it was something that none of you could live without. He had been in the water tank for some 10 days now. That was his preferred pronoun, I had asked. A tank of body temperature water. I wanted to see what would happen over time to him. How keeping him submerged to his neck would affect him. And what would, happen over time. There is a theory that we stem from creatures that adapted to the seashore and then moved inland. So immersion in this case would be quite normal to deal with. Although, we did see the soldiers of the First World War struggle with something called trench foot. A fungal rot of the feet because they never had the chance to let their feet dry. The feet would fall apart. Ew. Random fact possible here. I know I digress too much, so I'll make it quick. Many reports were given by the Welsh soldiers coming back, the ones that were miners back home, about how excellent the trenches conditions were compared to working in Wales. That shows you that life can be bleak if you would rather be in a trench being shot at than down to bit. As with much of my art, I had done little or no research on what would happen to the human in the water. I wanted to see what would happen. I like to fully document my work due to its massive importance to the world and society. I always like to think that people are not ready for my work at this moment in history. The world has some maturing to do before it can actually see what I'm trying to do, show and teach you. I think it will eventually become accepted by the art world once they grow the fuck up. Usually it's, oh, this is terrible, the horror, the many. See, they have to mature. As usual, the whole process was filmed from many angles around the tank. I brought in my tech geek Igor-like servant to help. He was, of course, Malcolm. You should already know something about him from previous podcasts. He had a director's eye for the scenes that we created together. No, he's not a director. No, that's wrong. I was the director behind the camera. He can turn my direction into cinematic reality. Would he be known as a cinematographer? I think that would be the thing to call him. He spent a lot of time watching films, and he had a particular passion for one genre, and that was dodgy pornography. With the time and effort that he'd put into his study, he had at least a master's degree in porn appreciation, if not a doctorate. That meant that setting up and filming my scenes was pretty straightforward and easy for him. He told me already in his squeaky little voice that the footage was created was just a bit more of an extreme form of adult entertainment. I mean, I was a bit pissed off when he said that at first. My work isn't really intended to be sort of entertaining. It's supposed to be an experience, often a challenging experience to get through, but nevertheless an experience. I like to make the footage available to those parts of the web that can handle it. You know who you are. You are the dark and wonderful people. You are the ones I do all this shit for. You get it, whatever it is. What is it? It is just it, and you get it. And thank fuck for you. I also do make my work available for the fluffier side of the internet. They might not want it, but they get it. I mean, Malcolm is also a great hacker. He has to be with his particular sexual deviations. It must take a huge effort to dig that deep into the internet's darkest corners. His computer equipment is costly, but he's really good with it. A handy person to own. I, through his work, have managed to get my films listed on the Disney Plus app, Crayola.com, and National Geographic Kids channel. Why should the young and impressionable miss out on my specialist pieces? I like to change people's minds about the wrongness of violence and death. It amazes me how they will have a bunch of lions ripping apart a baby zebra. They will have ravens pulling birds from nests on cliffs. But you do one live human dissection and people go fucking mental. You know, up in arms and ban it and stuff. Malcolm had recently upgraded the cameras and equipment for me so we could get gruesome in the finest of detail. I wanted to go 3D, but Malcolm said that was seen as somewhat passé these days. It's a shame really, isn't it? This shit would have been great in 3D. I'd thought of many titles for my little piece. Man in the Water, Breaking Down, Swollen Moments. I found that something would often happen that would mean a change in the name during the creation of the piece. I would choose the title after the film was finished. It would soon be released when he finally succumbed to the grueling procedure. I would not do much editing, to be honest. Maybe just speed the film up so it fits into a couple of hours of viewing instead of the days it took. The work was going well. He was a true beauty in place, although his breathing and pulse rate was somewhat atypically fast. He was still alive. Maybe this had something to do with the pressure of the water on his vascular system. His heart and lungs worked harder to pump life, giving blood around a compressed body. I don't know. His head was held at the neck in a collar of boards. This was a difficult thing to do. You would think it would be quite easy, but then you learn about bed sores. Okay, I know it's not a bed, but the body gets these things called pressure sores. When the body is touched under pressure for any length of time, it becomes sore and breaks down at that point. These can soon get infected and cause problems. To stop these sores from happening, you have to move the collar every 2 hours to prevent them. You see, it's not that easy creating this artwork. Could you be asked to do that kind of thing? Could you? Honestly though, I did get Malcolm to do all that shit stuff, like preventing bed sores and emptying colostomy bags. I don't like that shit. You see what I did there? Fucking hilarious, hairy-assed werewolf. I did not like that shit. Colostomy bag shit, you know. Sorry. He hung from his neck under the surface of the vast tank of water bodily. Do you know how expensive that size of tank is? Sorry, back to the story. I know. Sorry, Fen's telling me off here. He dangled naked and no part of his body touched the container's glass. He could move readily if he wanted to. At first he'd struggled, but he'd soon tired of that and just hung limply from the collar of the tank. We were at 10 days in it. The skin had begun to break down as the immersion separated the cells of his flesh. There was distinct evidence of him beginning to rot from the outside inward. The water had been sterile, so that wasn't the source of the infections. His skin, I suppose, would already have the fungus and bacteria that attacked his flesh covering it. Malcolm had washed and shaved and cleaned him before sticking them in there, but it seems you cannot clean the skin well enough. He was really rotting, but still alive. Probably for not much longer before, well, he simply kind of just fell apart. I kept him fed and hydrated with IV lines. The water was maintained in the tank to match his body temperature, so he didn't die of hypothermia. This was necessary, although it had the side effect of producing the perfect parameters for the infections to grow and take hold. I'm always amazed at how easy the kit for torture is to buy. Just go to any tropical fish shop. It's there. Yes, Fen, I'm sorry. I just, like to digress a little bit. Yeah, I know they're not interested. Okay, yeah, I get it. Not like you guys want a step-to-step guide on how to do this shit. Well, apart from you, that is. You know who you are. I won't mention you by names, but you know. I climbed the steps next to the tank to look at the face and see if he was still lucid. His eyes were closed and his lips cracked and dry. He'd never been a beauty, but now he was a bloated mess. His face was a swollen mask, but I thought he was more beautiful now than he'd ever been before, especially before I began my work. Suffering and suffering without recourse, he held on, he fought. It was motivating to see and it inspired me. I cupped the chin in my hand and lifted his face towards mine. I have to admit the stench, well, that was somewhat ripe, and as he moved in response to my touch, the smell grew as the water was stirred. The slicks of what looked like oil and grease on the water surface were all disturbed and distorted, and the unique rainbow patterns were made as they moved. Eventually, with a little bit of shaking, he slowly fluttered his eyes open and looked up at me. He was present in that moment, and I could see in pain, such pain. He had not lost his hope. It was beautiful to see and share in this experience with him. A tear sprang in my eye as I looked at it. He was perfect. Just perfect in every way. His lips took some effort to open. It was as though they'd been partially glued together. I moved closer, nodding and reassuring him in the moment. "Please help me," he cracked. I told it. I'm making you something that will never be seen again. Beautiful, beautiful art. You will be in the public eye very soon and be famous. Your journey and how you live with your subjection to this process will be your mark on history. The eyes left mine and he looked down, a broken being, no more questions forthcoming. I kissed it on the forehead, dropping his chin from my hand and climbing down the steps to look upon the underwater scene before me. It was beautiful. The tank was pretty murky with trails emanating from the body. There were green and blue blooms on baggy, ill-fitting skin as he seemed to swing back and forth beneath the surface, as though there was a current of water moving him around. A tube ran from his ureter to collect his urine in a large bag outside. It was milky white for some reason, but was constantly being filled as the body tried to get rid of the excess of water being drawn into him by simple osmosis. The poo collection method I had used the first time I tried this artwork had not gone well, so I had to abandon my first attempt to set this piece up. The new method was working quite well. I won't go into great detail, but it involves a big bag and a pipe. Quite a surprisingly wide bore pipe, I admit. I should imagine that it was not a comfy introduction for him when that was applied to the body. Applying is a nice way of saying we had to stick it up the hoop. Anyway, I had to leave for the day and look forward to seeing how things developed. It was a fantastic journey for him. He had been a great sacrifice. I appreciate him. I appreciate the supreme effort. Thank you.